Welcome, everyone. I'm Brian McCall from Catholic Family News, and I'm happy to bring you another special report. Today, I'm joined by Stephen Kokx, and I won't give a very lengthy introduction because the substance of this special report is to talk about his story, but you may recognize his name. He's a regular journalist for LifeSite News, who does phenomenal work for the English-speaking world. And you also may recognize him because he is a contributor from time to time to Catholic Family News, both on our website and our newspaper. Most recently, his most important work in the recent past has been an article he published with us, Questions for Vigano, which prompted a very important reply from Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano a few months ago on some important topics. So welcome, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Absolutely. It's great to be here finally on the podcast. I know I've been writing for you guys for almost 2 years, but it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yes, no, we're happy to give you our viewers a chance to get to know you a little bit. It's always helpful to sort of know the people you're reading a little bit and know where they're coming from. So you as some people may know, have had, like so many of us who have found our way to tradition, have had a journey. Right? Worked out our salvation in fear and trembling, and wanted to talk with you a little bit and have you share your experience, how you came to the point where you are in your spiritual life now. So why don't we begin with kind of your background, just how you grew up, what kind of formation you had in relation to the faith as a young person.
Yeah, so I'm the second oldest in a family of 4. My dad is a carpenter, and my mom's stay-at-home mom who did daycare at their school and eventually worked at a local public school in their kitchen, and doing what needed to be done to get by. I went to Catholic schools my whole life. My dad's one of 4, my mom's one of 7, and we're all very much Polish Catholics. And so, Christmas time, Easter, Thanksgiving, we would have all these, massive parties, 30, 40 cousins coming by. And at Christmas, I remember growing up, we would pass out a plot key. We would do, carry the baby Jesus to the crib and sing Christmas carols and all these, great Catholic traditions growing up. And even in grade school, I was fortunate to kind of be on the tail end in the 1990s of being taught by very religious nuns, school sisters of Notre Dame. I went to a school called Sacred Heart of Jesus here in West Michigan in Grand Rapids. And today it's become a sort of classical academy. It's called Sacred Heart Academy. But back then there was a convent. And I remember Sister Frances Marie, we would sing Polish Christmas carols and all these sorts of really just great traditions at school. And I'll never forget the nuns because of they were different than the secular teachers in many ways. I remember the sister at one point, she had me come up in front of the room, and I think I had done something wrong to my classmate. I was talking to him out of turn, and she had me apologize to the whole class for interrupting. And I never forgot it because that's how some of these nuns were. And, they taught us altar serving and things like that. And really that kind of, those institutions, my family, my mom, again, being one of 7, and my grandma being kind of the rock on my mom's side, as well as the school we went to, which was a block from my house. We literally walked to school. I mean, that really gave me a firm upbringing in the faith. And, we had mass every week at school, and I was involved in sports and everything. So we really had that solid upbringing that I think, unfortunately, today, many Catholic schools just really aren't passing on to their students.
It's interesting because even though it sounds like we're about 20 years apart, it sounds almost identical to my experience in the 1970s, right? So I grew up in kind of a big Irish Catholic family, lots of cultural Catholicism, right, around holidays. Went to St. Charles Borromeo School, which is now closed because lack of students.
Right. Yeah, Sacred Heart Art School was never closing too.
But Immaculate Heart nuns who, again, this was the 70s. They're all older nuns, had been raised pre-conciliar, kind of trained. And it was interesting. My early years, looking back, were kind of this way they always were with shorter habits on, is what I say.
Yeah,
but like you said, very traditional minded. But essentially, you mentioned altar serving. It reminded me one thing that I think when I first found the traditional mass triggered with me. I remember serving in the new mass as a little boy. And on the schedule, they would have like the 2 altar boys, and it was always the bell. One was called the bell, and the other was called the book. They identified, and I always remember as a kid saying, like, because they'd gotten rid of the bells, and obviously you don't move the missal, and so I was always like, well, what is this bell and book thing? Like, why am I identified the book? I don't do anything with the book. And it was only when I learned to serve the traditional mass, I was like, oh, that was a remnant of when they would schedule masses. It was like one was all acolyte one was acolyte two, one moved the book, and one fell. I thought it just kind of this remnant, but not the substance. So it's just interesting to hear. It sounds like we had a very similar similar experience.
And our sisters wore the habit too, so everyone knew who they were. They weren't just wearing Dominicans or anything. They were pretty good and strict, and I'm so grateful for it. And wow. I do pray for their souls today, because they've all since passed. But it was a great school.
So then what happened after that? Sort of another sort of not as happy phase of your life, I guess.
Well, I mean, high school. I went to a Catholic high school, like I said, and that was really when I started getting much more interested in politics. This was 2003, 2004. So I watched the Bush Gore Supreme Court rulings and things like that. I was in 8th grade at the time. I thought it was always interesting. What's going on here? So the next couple of years, I started to get more involved, or at least think about politics. I didn't go to rallies or really anything like that. But in 2004, I came from blue collar, kind of upbringing, middle class, and again, my dad's a carpenter, so I kind of always just assumed politics was the rich versus the poor. That the Republicans were the rich guys, the bad guys, and the Democrats were the labor union, blue collar type warriors, right? And John Kerry ran in 2004, and I was in AP government at the time, I think, and he was coming to my hometown, and I went to his rally with a couple friends, and I said, I'm voting for this guy. Like, he gets it. And I sort of thought about the abortion issue. I mean, I don't really recall in high school being taught much about, kind of like what's the best way to vote, and not much really else at all in high school either, to be honest, and about our faith, even though it was a Catholic school. And there's just so few things that I really recall from my religion classes, and it's I don't know if that's my fault for not being interested, if it's if I was goofing off. I just don't remember the doctrine being that sound, and so in any case, I voted for John Kerry. I said, he's anti-war. Iraq war was big at the time, and I said the abortion issue. I was talking to my great aunt about it at the time, and I was like, well, isn't it just kind of one of many issues? Kerry's trying to end wars, right? He's trying to bring troops home. Right. Obviously, we know he's not that at all anymore. He's a total globalist, dyed in the wool liberal. But I voted for him, and I kind of carried that mentality into high school. This idea that, okay, I'm a secular, not secular, but I'm a leftist, sort of. I'm a Democrat. I still have my Catholic faith. I'm a blue collar Catholic, right? The famous Kennedy line that, okay, we're religious, but I'm not going to impose on anybody. That kind of went with me. And in high school we had mass once a month. I don't think I ever really went to confession. That was never really drained in us. I mean, it was available to us. We never really did adoration. There was an adoration chapel, but it was just kind of there. We never really did it very much. And so freshman year of college, I was always a high academic performer. I had a great scholarship to the Catholic liberal arts school I went to, which was also in Grand Rapids. It's called it's a school here in Grand Rapids. And the first semester I went on academic probation, actually. And for someone who'd always been on the honors list, and it was just a weird time. Like, I stopped going to mass, kind of stopped going to class, and found myself within like one semester being kind of taken off my scholarship. And I really had to think hard and fast about that, because I had a meeting with the dean at the time, and she wanted to do, so I think it might have been he wanted to do some it might have not been the dean, actually. It might have been like the house resident RA or something like that. Okay. And they said, hey, you got to get your stuff together. And that kind of woke me up because I was going to parties, not really going to class. And so that was a real awakening. So I had to kind of decide, which way am I going to go? And really what happened was, I think it was junior year. I finally decided, okay, what am I really going to do here? Sophomore year, I was transitioning out of different things, meeting new people, and getting more involved in campus activities. And junior year, I said, okay, I'm going to really try something different, because I'd always been kind of shy in high school. And so I volunteered to do the freshman orientation program. So I was paired up with another gal, a friend of mine named Erin. And we were tasked with basically what you do is you facilitate activities for incoming freshmen for the first 3 days of their experience. You help them move in, you do all these icebreakers, get them to know the school, things like that. And that was totally outside of my element. Like I was not that sort of person to do that. And Erin was like the complete opposite of me. She was this tiny, aggressive, very religious young woman. And up until that point, I never really met anyone like that. And, for someone who was living off campus, wasn't really going to church, that was a complete, it was a shock to the system. It's like plunging into a cold bath, right? Like, oh, what's this?
Wow.
This is totally different.
This is different. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that simple stepping outside of my comfort zone really started getting the gears going, I think. This was, again, 2007, 2008. And by this time, President
So this
Obama,
is the end, the end of the George Bush, beginning of Obama.
Yep. And so Obama had been coming along. I'd been still sort of in my liberal mentality, and I got swept up all in Obama. I was gaga over the guy, because he's talking about, we're going to receive the oceans, all these things. It's such lofty, verbiage. And I was like, this is great. This is our generation's chance, blah, blah, blah. And, I had various debates with Republicans at my college. And looking back, I probably didn't have great arguments. I was like, okay, terrible. And Obama's great, blah, blah, blah. And it kind of made sense with my, weak Catholic faith, because I'd been watching MSNBC at the time, watching Keith Olbermann. He was like my number one go-to guy. And I remember distinctly putting on Facebook, this is back when Facebook was still kind of new, my political views, and I wrote in eco-socialist. Everybody typed that in. I was so proud, because I was like, studying environmentalism, and like I thought I was really hip in things, and I just, looking back, wasn't really grounded in anything other than just, I'm a liberal and these are my views and this is what needs to happen. So I ended up voting for Obama. I went to a couple campaign things, and that's kind of the middle of my college experience. So I'm wrestling with, okay, here's this friend of mine who's exposing me to these different things. We'd talked about religion to an extent, and talked about my upbringing. But then there's this, this liberal bent in me that wants, the middle class to do well, and wants to, do a bunch of things. I was never again, like pro-abortion or pro-gay marriage. Right. The social stuff always was with me, and that was from, I think, my upbringing. It was mostly economic related from my liberal views, and so it's middle of college, and I'm like, well, what do I really believe? I do think so few people actually ask themselves that and really reflect and say, okay, what is it, and how are my arguments being prepared? Because Scripture tells us, know your faith so you can be able to defend it. And so, at this time, I'm getting more involved in student activities, student senate. I was a student senate budget director. I was involved in a couple different things. I actually had my own radio show on campus. I'm not sure if there's too many people that listen, but I mean, I tried it. I studied in Chicago for a semester. So I was involved in Chicago in the grassroots organizing sort of mentality that's so pervasive there. And
really where Obama, got a lot of experience on that in that.
Oh yeah, and I met people who knew him. I mean, so I was like all in. I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And
well, if I can, for 1 second, it's interesting for those of our viewers who listened to my interview with Dr. Hendershot recently. She talked exactly about this phenomenon, that how socialism can really appeal to young people in college who are, seeing the problems in our world, but can't quite understand them or pinpoint them, and are looking for kind of some big big difference, right? Some way to really help people that are being hurt by the modern system. And it's very appealing to them. And so it's interesting to hear. I hear a lot of things you're saying. For our viewers, if you've listened to her interview, you're hearing, here's a good example of what she's talking about, how socialism just very subtly can lure in particularly young college students with that appeal. That's interesting.
Yeah, you don't really know any better. And again, I was a business major, Brian. Like, I did
Right.
not really get involved.
Right.
So the stuff I knew was like whatever I just got from like Keith Olbermann and MSNBC. So I wasn't really studying this stuff. But you know, fourth, fifth year, you know, after doing all these extracurricular activities, I actually went to Brooklyn, New York at one point, did a study exchange program for a week, an alternative spring break. So I was immersing myself in all these different things. And it was just really a time of growth to say, okay, what is it I believe? And at one point I said, okay, I'm going to watch Fox News. Watch Fox. And I'm going to read Bill O'Reilly, because Bill O'Reilly was the big blowhard back then, right? He was the big guy. And so I bought like 3 of his books. And I'm always sort of reticent to tell that story because people are like, Bill O'Reilly, what did he have to do with you? And quite a bit, actually, because it was the first sort of conservative author I read. And, you know, he was talking about secular progressivism, George Soros, and all these other leftist liberal values. And I was like, am I liberal? Am I actually those things? Is that what I believe? And I wasn't. I was like, okay, if that's what they really kind of stand for, I don't think that's me. And so that sort of kind of kicked open a door for me. And so I graduated in 5 years. I took an extra year and studied some environmental studies. I took an extra class on theology, and I graduated, and my whole life was kind of built up to that moment in 2009, because I'd been such a great student, and, you know, kept my scholarship, and was involved in so much, and I took advantage, I think, of so many opportunities. And when graduation came, I was like, okay, what's next? I hadn't had a job lined up, even though I had done an internship in Chicago. I did an internship in Grand Rapids in Michigan. And my first job, you'll never believe it, out of college was Jimmy John's. I worked fast food.
Yeah. And a lot of people that happens. Yes. and
that's, you know, that's a bigger issue, because I think so many young people should not be going to college today. I mean, they should be getting a trade because they leave school with $30,000 in debt, and like me, they don't have jobs to go to. So I found myself in that situation for about 3 months. And I said, okay, what is it I'm going to do? Because I had a lot of potential. I thought I knew a lot of different things and was very involved. And so I reconnected with some of the instructors I had when I was living in Chicago and doing my internship in Chicago. Because it was a joint program where you have a job and where you take classes. And so I reconnected with them, and they were launching. And here's another shocker, a master's degree at Loyola. It was a master's degree in social justice and community development. It's a technical name of the program, I'm not going to lie. And, you know, to me, that was intriguing. I didn't know much about social justice at the time. I was 21 years old. Didn't have much theology training, but I was wrestling with this sort of, well, okay, these political views were kind of, you know, at the forefront of my mind. And so the program was, okay, we're going to teach community development, community organizing, you know, we're going to teach economics, we're going to teach political philosophy, but we're also going to teach the social justice stuff. So theology, Vatican II. And I was like, this sounds perfect. Like, why not? I'm not doing anything better. And so I applied, and I got in. That's around January 2010. So that's kind of where.
Okay. So that was a master's program.
It was, yep. Okay. And that was in Chicago. So I had to move down to Chicago and start that. So that's the next stage kind of in my journey. Yeah.
So you move to Chicago, you start in this degree. And again, another sort of interesting thing, social justice, community organizing. And this is what's so insidious about today. Those things sound very good because they are sort of rooted in true Catholic social teaching, right? In terms of subsidiarity and in justice and legal justice, which is really the original term that social justice got distorted to. Because it's interesting, in Quadragesimo around the time of Pius XI, they really talk about legal justice, which has a very precise classical meaning, but they started shifting and just changing, particularly in English, the vocabulary to this word social justice. And several people at the time, Heinrich Parsch, I think, is one of them, who sort of said, ooh, we got to be careful. Like, this is an ambiguous word. If by that you mean what church always meant by legal justice, okay, we're with you, we understand.
Sure.
But they already saw, like, here's a way of shifting it so you could hear a term that you think has an older meaning, but it's been filled with new content. And it's interesting. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So what happened now? You're in Chicago. What leads? Where does the next phase lead you?
Yeah. So I mean, grad school was really the time where all this kind of just blew open. I mean, I'm sitting there in class and I'm being taught by leftist feminist professors, and I'm like, okay,
right.
am I really into this? And literally within like a semester, I'm like, probably in the wrong place. But what can you do? I mean, so I do appreciate the professors I had, and I'm not trying to take any revenge on any of them. There's a lot of good in what I had come to study and know, but there was definitely a liberal bent, and so I had sort of just bought up every book I could find. Went to the library, bought up books on libertarianism. I had a class on economics where we learned about Milton Friedman.
Yeah.
About an internship at the Archdiocese. So I started working for, it was Cardinal George at the time. So he was, relatively speaking, somewhat conservative. And so I was working in their office for peace and justice. And I met a guy by the name of Ray Flores. Now, Ray is quite well known in conservative and traditional circles. He writes for The Wanderer. He's worked for American Life League. And so him and I struck up a pretty good friendship that's lasts to this day. And so what was happening, I think, mentally, is that in my spare time and at work, I was being exposed to conservative and libertarian and a sort of alternative thinking that I was getting in the classroom. And that, again, I think what people have to realize, I guess, about my story is I sort of just like read my way into the faith, like literally just bought hundreds of books and was just left and right intrigued because I'd never been taught it before. And so I would just, my apartment, my 500 foot studio, it was just books, wall to wall books. And so I kind of just immersed myself in the world of academia and in my work at the Archdiocese. And so did an independent study on libertarianism, went down to Wake Forest in North Carolina, I think.
Yes.
And that was put on by the Institute for Humane Studies. And at the time I went, I really thought libertarian kind of was the answer. You know, why does the government have any role? What's its purpose? It just messes things up anyway.
No, it's interesting. Libertarianism is often a door that through which people find, as you're describing, right? Because even though eventually you may come to see the flaws in it, it kind of opens a door to a prison, right? We're sort of imprisoned in this sort of socialist mentality, and they sort of open a door and say, here's a way out, which is great, right? Here's another alternative. Here's a good critique. And many people, I think I myself passed through that, seeing libertarianism as an answer. But then ultimately seeing that there are foundations to it which are problematic with the church.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I would go to these events and at Wake Forest, and when I was back in Chicago, I would go to their sort of like happy hour events and talking to people, and they're like, well, what do you do? I work for the Archdiocese. I'm like, how does Catholicism square with libertarianism? And I was like, what? Yeah, does it? I don't know. I guess so. So I was kind of like in the next phase of my transition. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to church now. I work for the Archdiocese. What does the church teach? Like, what is the Pope's teachings on economics? Is there papal teaching on economics? And so I'm grappling with all this as I'm working for the Archdiocese and going to class, and I graduated, and I got my master's degree, wrote my thesis. My thesis was actually, I basically recreated the master's degree program that I was in, and I do thank the professors and a dean that I had at the time, because they knew I was sort of not liberal as I was going through the classes, and they were like, Stephen's kind of the odd duck here. We'll just let him do his thing. And so I came up basically with a revamped master's degree, like wrote classes on, here's what electives could be. Here's the required classes. Here's the required reading. So it was kind of like my first foray into higher education. And at this time, again, I'm starting to say, okay, what is it I really believe? And I graduated, ended up getting a adjunct instructor position back in Grand Rapids in Michigan at Grand Rapids Community College. And I eventually started teaching at Muskegon Community College, which is about half hour west of here. And so that's kind of the next step. Like, okay, here I am. I know my politics. I've been through multiple phases of, views. At this time, Mitt Romney's running for president. I voted for Romney. And I started getting into that world. Like, okay, I'm going to be an adjunct instructor. Maybe I'll go back and get a PhD. And
if I just pause you for a minute there. So at this point, you've never gone to the traditional mass, or were you aware of the traditional mass at this point?
Not at all.
No. Okay.
Even growing up, I mean, like it's interesting you mentioned that, because grade school, high school, we never really been exposed to Latin mass, like, or really any other liturgy than Novus Ordo. And again, when I was working for the Archdiocese, I would go to almost daily mass when I'm at work. They had mass there at noon, and on the weekend I would go to Sunday night mass at Loyola.
But never. Given that you're in Chicago, you didn't know anything about St. John Cantius, for example.
No, not at all.
Yeah, because that's, for our viewers, that's a parish in the diocese that, particularly at that time, had a large community that would go, and I think they offered both the new mass and the traditional, but had a very traditional, beautiful church, and then at least for a number of their masses were traditional masses. But not on your radar. Yes.
Yeah, no, not unfortunately not. No.
Okay, so then you're back. You're teaching in Grand Rapids, and then what happens next?
Well, I mean, at that point, I'm pretty much a Catholic, like at least good mainstream conservative Catholic. Like I'm buying into the church's ideas of, of economics and things. So I joined a couple of professional organizations, the Fellowship of Catholic Scholars, and the Society of Catholic Social Scientists. And I attended and actually gave lectures at the annual conferences in South Bend and Franciscan University in Steubenville. Oh. And had been writing various book reviews for their annual and quarterly publications. So I'm really just, again, like just going all in on this academic route. Like, okay, I'm going to be a professor someday. And, I was writing for CatholicVote.org at the time and adjuncting. So, I'm 25, 26-ish, and I'm going to church, Novus Ordo, not really going to confession. No, I'd not been big on theology. I kind of, again, read my way in, and I'm going to weekly mass. And I kind of started asking myself, okay, is this it? Like, because I wasn't really getting much out of it, to be honest. And really kind of what triggered it for me, or what kind of put me on the real path to what I think, like, it was rightly called a conversion. What I've discovered, it really is not what I had before.
Right.
One of my students at the time, when I'm teaching political science, came up to me after class, and he was, I think, a Calvinist, Lutheran. I forget. Maybe he eventually went to Kuyper College. Abraham Kuyper. I'm not sure which denomination Kuyper was, but the student came up to me after class and said, "Mr. Kokx, are you a Catholic by chance?" He must have picked up on it in my lectures. I don't know, but I said yes. I said, "Wow, this is interesting. No one's ever asked me that before." And he said, "I have questions about my faith and the Catholic faith. Can you help me understand the church?" I said, "Sure, yeah. Let's go to lunch. Well, are you free this Saturday?" And that kind of set off a cascade of events that really forced me to know the faith, because I had it. We went to lunch, and he starts asking me, "Well, what about like James 6, or what about Matthew 7, where he says this and that? My body, eat my body and drink my blood. Is that literal? I mean, do you believe that priests have give confession, give absolution?" And I sat there. Yeah, I guess we do. And I couldn't defend it.
Yes.
I couldn't defend it. So I had to bring a friend of mine with me, because I just didn't know. And so those 4 or 5 lunches really kind of like set me down this path of, wow, I don't know my faith. I don't know my faith. And what is it I believe? So that kind of is the next step in this long journey.
And it's interesting. It's one of the blessings of teaching, if you have humility, right? Because it's a real opportunity for you to learn. Because when a student asks you a question, and again, if you don't have humility, because I've seen lots of colleagues like this, they're sort of
Yeah.
defensive, and I'm just going to make up something because I want to show I'm smarter than you because you're the student. But if you actually approach it, I mean, it's such almost daily an opportunity. You go, oh wow, I never. That's interesting, and will get you to.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that, and get you to learn. So I've learned more from teaching than almost any other experience, because if you're open to that opportunity.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to get into teaching in grad school. I'm like, maybe I'll teach, because I mean, I was a very shy student. I don't know if that's because the nuns or what.
Maybe.
but if you would have asked me like in high school or college, are you going to be a instructor someday? I said, no way. I'm too shy. I can never do that. But one of the reasons I did get into it is because of kind of the way some, not all, of my professors in grad school were like, you have to believe this. This is what's true. This is right. So they didn't have humility, So when I got into teaching, I was like, wow, you get a lot more than you.
And you get, yes.
Yeah, right. So
yes.
and you know that as an instructor yourself. So I mean, it's very true.
So you realize you need to know your faith, so you start reading again, I guess, or studying again. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, and I think you have to, like I said before, you have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to adapt and to admit you're wrong. I mean, again, I'm 18. I'm an eco-socialist, voting for Obama and Kerry, and like, what triggered the next step, like I said, is just watching Fox News, reading conservatives. And then in grad school, just reading these books and being like, okay, what is it that's right? What does the church teach? And so, I'm 26 at the time, and I actually moved in with a college roommate of mine, and we reconnected, and he's working at a bank, I'm teaching, and we just have all these discussions about what does the church teach. And he'd been similarly like me, raised Novus Ordo, and had all these questions in his mid-20s because he was doing after church teaching on Sunday, like Sunday school. And he was reading through these things in these textbooks, like quotes from, of all people, Mother Teresa, that said, I want to help the Hindu be a better Hindu. I want to help the Baptist be a better Baptist. I mean, it's allegedly, it's a quote from Mother Teresa, and I think that's what was in the book. And I said, that doesn't sound right. Is that right? Is that what we teach?
Yeah.
And so, so I'm like, okay, what's going on? And so he kind of before me kind of discovered tradition, and kind of by an end around way, because he starts bringing up one day these talks on like conspiracy theories and about like George W. Bush and the New World Order.
Yep. And
I'm like, are you sure about that? Like this is like, I think the devil's kind of getting after you. And I had talked with other friends who knew my roommate, and they said the same thing. They said, hey man, stay away from him. He's kind of
going off the deep end, right?
Yeah. So he's going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had experience with anyone who kind of, has that mentality, but I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, let's hear him out, because I've been wrong before.
Right.
I've been wrong 5 times before.
Right.
So I'm just sitting here like, okay, well, what is he talking about? And that just kind of slowly, that and prayer. Prayer is crucial to my whole story in all of this, because I was praying through this all, saying, God, show me the truth. You have to pray. You have to stay humble. You have to be willing to be wrong. And that's the key of conversion, at least for me, as someone who reads things and has been wrong before. So we're talking, and he comes across, I think it was Father Salvani's Liberalism is a Sin book.
Great book. Yes.
Yeah. It totally just blew my mind. Literally, the second I read it, I said, wow, this is, I can't debate this. I don't know what to do. Previously I'd been going to all these conferences, like I said, from these certain conservative groups. I've been going to the Acton Institute. It's a well-known conservative organization. I've been going to their summer university for 3 years, right? So I'm big on this conservative, neoconservative kick, right? Free market economics, libertarianism, fused kind of together. That was my worldview. And then, so I'm reading Father Salvani, And it's like, nope, that's wrong. That is not right at all.
Yes.
And so that kind of got me thinking more. And again, I'd been reading all these other traditional books. So I started reading, we just slowly discovered Michael Davies, just slowly discovered Archbishop Lefebvre and all these other council fathers who were the conservative ones. And so I just started, again, gobbling up as many books on Vatican II, on papal economics, and just saying, okay, is this what the church teaches? And so my friend would bring these old papal encyclicals, as well as Father Salvani's book, I think, to the Novus Ordo priests in our diocese and ask them, hey, what's this? What is this? Like, why did the popes preach on Freemasonry in the 1800s? Do we still do that? What is the church's teaching on Freemasonry? And none of them had a good answer for him at all. And so, so we would reconvene in the evening and just talk about all of this and obviously pray about it. And that's kind of where we're at in grad school, or after grad school and teaching. So this is my young 20s, my late 20s, and we're kind of living together, and we're like, well, is this kind of what's happening? Like, what's wrong with the church? I mean, so that's kind of where we are in our mid and late 20s. So a friend of mine, we reconnected. So
that's interesting, because again, in my experience, there are often two different paths, right, that lead to the same way. And again, up until now, our stories have been got a lot of similarities to listen to you. But there's either people find the doctrine, as it sounds like you did, and then they find the Mass and make the connection. In my case, it was sort of the other path that I know some people have had. They find the traditional Mass, and then that leads them to read Lefebvre and Davies and find the doctrine. So it's interesting, and we always have to remember. I always talk to people trying to find people to bring them to tradition. You don't know what path God's got people set on, so you always have to be open. Like, you're open to kind of where are they, what are they thinking about, and if they're kind of on the find the liturgy first and then the doctrine, you don't want to be like pushing them maybe before they're ready on the doctrine, and just sort of be sensitive to, okay, what route are people taking here? So again, it sounds like you're finding the doctrine. How then does the connection with the Mass come about?
Yeah, well, real quick point on that. Though, because I mean, it's a temperamental conversion. Yes. I think God uses us where we are.
Yes,
and it's also, I think, a gender thing. Men are much more inclined to read and to study and to, like, true. I did. I bought like 1,000 books, right? That's like my personal library. It's 1,000 books.
Yes.
And for others, it's going to be the music. The others, it's going to be the quiet of the low Mass. For others, it's going to be the wearing of the vestments and the beauty of it. And for me, it was a combination. You're right to say it was primarily doctrine, but when I first I think we typed in like Latin Mass on YouTube or something, and all of these Gregorian chants had come up. We're like, where has this been? This is whoa! Like, this beats "Let us build the city of God."
Oh no,
no, this is a million times better than that.
Yes.
Right. So I'm sitting here like, what happened? And so I think at one point I actually went and asked my grandma. I said, what do you know about Latin Mass? And what about, like, what happened? And she gave me her old missal and her husband's missal, who died in the 70s. Rest his soul. And so they gave me their missal, and very soon after, my friend and I kind of just stumbled on this rabbit hole. We're like, okay, what's up with Vatican II? What's the Latin Mass? And so even before kind of coming full circle on Vatican II, we went to a Latin Mass in the area. And when I first went, I think it was a Sunday low Mass. And it was at 8:30, which I didn't like. I'm not a morning person. It was, it was rough. Because I would always go to Sunday night Mass. And the first time I went to Latin Mass, what struck me was that time stood still, and the liturgy itself, the silence of it. It was a low Mass. There wasn't a lot of singing, but the chant that did happen was just, it lifts your soul up. This is why the crisis in the church is what it is, because we don't have beautiful music, we don't have beautiful church and liturgy anymore. But the timelessness of it. So like the low Masses are what, 40 minutes, sometimes 30 at the most, sometimes depending on the priest. I didn't think when I was there, I wasn't thinking to myself, when's it's going to be over?
Yes.
Like previously at the Novus Ordo, I'm like, okay, there's the shaking of the hands at the Our
Okay,
Father.
we're almost there. Right?
Yeah, we're almost there. Get me out of here. Can I go home and
Yes.
watch football?
Yes.
But that just struck me like a thunderbolt. Like again, like all these moments, Brian. I guess what I'm trying to hopefully people can come away with from today is there's moments in life where your paradigm shifted, where God just imparts grace, and literally just you go with it.
Yes.
And that kind of what happened.
And if I can pick up on your, I think time stands still. To me, that has a double meaning because I think you're at one. There is the sense when you're in the Mass of being in eternity, where your time there's no time passing in that sense.
Right.
But also, it's occurred to me in sort of the historical sense. And this, I'm reminded of the quote, I don't have it in front of me, but to paraphrase from Michael Davies, when he wrote about the liturgy, I think it's in his History of the Roman Rite, he says, the Roman Rite, it breathes an age when Caesars ruled the world, and what he's sort of saying is you sort of step into this timelessness historically, where all the ages of the world are there, right? You have Roman, medieval, all these histories of the church are sort of fused into this one moment that makes it timeless in that sense, because it kind of spans ages. And it's true, I think both of those experiences the traditional Mass preserves, as opposed to walking into a new Mass where you feel like sometimes you've walked into the 1970s, right? You're trapped for a time to stand still, but in a different sense.
Well, that reminds me of a Fulton Sheen quote. He said, if you marry the spirit of the age, you'll be a widow in the next.
Oh, yes. That's a great quote.
Wow. Really is, I think, yeah.
Yes. So now you found the traditional Mass, and you're reading Lefebvre. What are some of the maybe things of Archbishop Lefebvre that you've been reading?
They Have Uncrowned Him was really kind of the one that answered a lot of questions for me, because at the time, like I said, I'd been presenting on Americanism, on liberalism, so I knew political philosophy. And actually, the years prior to this, Brian, so I'm 27, I'd been giving talks at our diocese catechetical conferences on sort of these topics, and so I was kind of making the rounds of the local speaking circuit, if you will. And so the Archbishop's writings on the dignity of the human person, on religious liberty, on ecumenism, on Dignitatis Humanae, on Quas Primas, questions I had been asking conservative, mainstream scholars and whose writings who wrote about this. They weren't giving me the full picture. It's like, what is the dignity of the human person? What does that mean? Why do we base that? Why is that the basis of everything? It sounds like kind of a philosophical argument, right? It's not.
Yes.
There's a way to properly understand the dignity of the human person, but why is it the end all for everything? And it's really that sort of John Paul II phenomenology, right? This exaltation of man as this, this divine creature. So anyway, Archbishop Lefebvre's books on Vatican II, again, Father Salvani's book on liberalism as a sin, and in recent years I've been reading just de Maistre and all these other old school conservatives, and so that's kind of buttressing the doctrine of what I'm coming to believe. And on the spiritual side, I started reading St. Alphonsus, and he's written so much. He's a doctor of the church, the patron saint of priests. And so my friend and I, we kind of went in on this collection of St. Alphonsus books. And literally, I think I read everything the man has written. I don't say that to boast, but it's just like, I was so drenched in it. Like, this is what he had to say about priests and the church and confession and adoration. I mean, have you read St. Alphonsus? I mean, it's just
not as much as you have. I would never say all of, but I have read some, so I know what you mean. Yes.
So his writings on the priesthood and on confession and adoration. I mean, I started going to the local adoration chapel after that, understanding the beauty of just sitting in adoration for a half hour. And so his writings on the spiritual side of things, more than anything. As well as St. Thomas, he's not a saint, Thomas à Kempis, and St. Francis de Sales, and all these spiritual books. I just started gobbling it up, and I said, where has this been my whole life? Why wasn't I taught this in high school and college by my previous priests? Like there's not, it seems, a firm grasp of the sacraments, of
Yes.
the various things priests do. I mean, everyone wants to call their priest Father Joe or Father Tom. I mean,
Right.
St. Alphonsus says the priest is greater than the angels because of the office itself. Okay,
Yes.
because he calls down from heaven the bread of life, which gives us salvation, and he forgives sins in the confessional. Both those things open up the gates of heaven for a soul.
Yes.
And that's not something the angels can do. It's not something Mary can even do.
Yes.
St. Alphonsus notes that too. So
Yes.
I read this, I'm like, maybe
Wow.
I should be a priest. Like I started
Oh.
thinking, I was like, this might be a path for me. So I started mulling all those things, and that's 27, 28, 29. That's kind of really like, wow, this is getting really deep. Like it's getting serious.
Mm.
So
you started just out of interest, from what did you make an Ignatian retreat around this time, or have you done that?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yes.
So
Yes.
literally the next 2.5 years, I thought I'm gonna be a priest. Like I was single. I was teaching still, adjuncting.
Mhm.
I eventually left adjuncting, and when I think I was about 31,
Okay.
I kind of just fell out of favor with it. I said, okay, teaching is great, but I'm becoming Catholic, like seriously Catholic, and I need something that edifies my soul in my day-to-day life. And so I did go on a Ignatian retreat. I wrote about it for LifeSite, actually. I wrote a blog in 2018 called 7 Reasons Why Everyone Should Go on a Ignatian Retreat. And
I remember it, yes, because I thought you very well distilled. I think you distilled very well those reasons. Good.
Well, the thing is, on those retreats, oftentimes when you do them, have you been on one yourself?
Yes.
Yeah. Oftentimes when you do them, at the end of the retreat, I'm told by the priests that were there, you tend to get some sort of consolation from God or from our Blessed Mother. And I set out on the retreat, not like, okay, I can't wait for that, but I'm just going to do the exercises and do it because I needed to know if I should be a priest or not.
Yes.
And the week was ups and downs. I mean, roller coaster,
yes.
consolation, desolation. I wanted to leave 3 days in, and the last day, we're praying the rosary, and we're down in the chapel, and on the second glorious mystery, just this immense feeling. I don't even know if it was a consolation. I think it was, because it might have been just more of a mystical experience, because I didn't feel the things around me. They didn't feel like they had a nature. Like I'm sitting in front of a desk. If I knock on this desk, it's wood. I can sense it. It has a presence. Like the walls around me, the men around me, they felt transparent, and I'm sitting there literally for like the whole decade, just like, what's happening? Like this isn't reality. This world is empty. It's passing. I don't know how else to better experience it other than like, I mean, the world didn't disappear for me. Like I could see the walls and stuff. They're still there. I'm not like, it's not an outer body experience, but the sense of it, like it wasn't real,
Yes.
So I left that being like, that's the closest I've come to God in my life. And that was just a really immensely powerful experience I carry to this day.
No, retreats are incredibly powerful. And again, one of the things, my first Ignatian I made, I remember, I think I finally realized the many things, as you're saying, but what I found very interesting is the most intense and strange temptations that appeared. And I'll just give one example. So, another person there at the retreat, I've never even met, never spoken to before, I would get overwhelmed with these sort of temptations to like despise the person. Like it was just really, really weird. And I remember catching myself like, I can't even know this person. Why would I have this weird aversion? But it for me, it sort of led me, like you're saying about awareness, more awareness of the presence of temptation. Because I think in our daily life, it's easy to sort of not even see the temptations. That's why we fall into them often, because we don't see them as that. But it's you can only have these kinds of experiences where you really see things for what they are. I think beautifully, as revealed to St. Ignatius, by doing this kind of thing, by going into this complete isolation and intense experience. Again, everyone often has a different experience, but as you're saying, there's something that comes out of it that it profoundly changes the way you view the world.
Yeah. Amen.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And everyone needs to do that. I think at some point,
Yes.
if you're a young man,
Yes.
especially
Yes.
considering the priesthood, I mean, consider giving your life to God first, as
Yes.
opposed to giving your life to a woman.
Yes.
It is a higher calling. If you can do it, great. I've since found out I don't have a vocation, but it is what St. Alphonsus says. It's the most glorious thing in the way that
Yes.
God's created, because it continues the mass. It
Yes.
continues the church until the end of time. So
But you're right. Everyone should discern. Every man should discern this, because God, even if it's true, because not everyone is. Many are. Not everybody is called. But even if you go through that, God will reward you, enormously for being open to it. Even if He says, "No, I've not called you, and you're meant to have something else," by having given a part of your life to hold yourself open to that, God will reward you with rich graces for offering yourself in that way. So that's why I say, again, every young man who isn't married yet, I should. Actually, I remember on my retreat, we got to the decision where you make a life decision. He's like, "Okay, now I don't want any of you coming to me and saying, 'Father, I just discerned I'm supposed to be a priest.'" When you've been married for 10 years, like,
right.
sorry, but no, if you're not, you really should formally commit yourself
Yeah.
to think about that, because you have nothing to lose, right? Either you'll find out you are, or God will reward you for doing
Yeah.
that.
Even if you don't think, I mean,
Yes.
there's I mean, like I said earlier, I bought up every book on the priesthood before I decided not before when I became traditional. I was like, I need to study this, right?
Yes.
My brain. And one of the signs the author says is, if you're scared or reticent of the priesthood, it might be a sign that you actually have a calling
Right.
to it. But in any way, yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful life, and I pray
Yes.
for our priests. We have to pray for our priests, because I mean, they're the ones who as St. Alphonsus said, they give us a bread of life, and so that's
Yes.
the most beautiful thing a human being can do.
Yes. Well, we're sort of nearing kind of the end of our time together, but I think we've reached, obviously not the end, because you have depending on God's providence, many years ahead of you. But the sort of reaching tradition, reaching the doctrine, the mass, I guess sort of a trifecta, so the mass, doctrine, and traditional spirituality. It sounds like all coming together.
Right.
So, is there, in our last few minutes together, is there anything else maybe you'd want to share, or looking back over your experience, or sort of final thoughts? I guess either another
Yeah.
angle, or what your concluding
Yeah.
thoughts would be.
I do think, in our 20s is when really um, it's the first time we're outside of our parents' home,
Mm,
and we have to decide, are we going to take that first step out into life on the right path? Are we going to
mm,
appreciate the gifts of having been raised in the faith um, that God gave us and our parents? I mean, my parents sacrificed a lot to send me to Catholic schools and grade school, high school, and it has paid off. That residue, if you will, has stuck
yes.
with me, and that family upbringing is there, and it never left me, even when
Mm,
I had stopped going to church in my early college years. And the thing is, I think if anyone who's young is going out on this journey, um, God will, I think, put people in your life that for various reasons, and try to appreciate them for what they are, and ask God, to find truth. I mean, He's not going to deny you that. And so, looking back, it was always a willingness to be wrong, a willingness to study and to keep studying and to keep asking questions. And I still ask questions today. I mean, those people who know me, I'm traditional, but there's things that are still unresolved, and no one's perfect.
yes.
Um, I'm not perfect. Traditional priests aren't perfect. And so we have to work through all that. And I think, going forward, I mean, I'm 34 now. I really want to, and I hope other traditional converts do this as well, it is to share their story, and is to share the knowledge and wisdom that they've gathered, accumulated
Yes.
through their experience. So one way I'm doing that is I've actually just completed a sort of autobiographical manuscript on my life with St. Alphonsus, because he was so
Mm,
impactful in me. It's only about 25,000 words. I'm trying to get it up a little bit more and share a lot of what you and I have talked about today, and share those anecdotes and personal stories, because I think conversion stories can be powerful. And just the wisdom of the saints is so
yes.
crucial in these times when we're not getting the wisdom from the church. And we need to look to those spiritual masters and those clergy who are maintaining the faith and passing it on, and to really seek them out and find them, because God's given them to us in the past. He would be a liar if he didn't continue to give them to us in the present.
Yes.
So we have to really kind of dig out and find where that is. And so I hope in the future to keep continuing to grow, to write some more books, and to really kind of really see what other people think too. I mean, there's a lot of confused people out there, people who go to different masses, and I'm hoping to contribute to their conversion, really, to the traditional faith in some way.
Wonderful. And I think a great theme you hit on there at the end is there's one of the dangers. We all, the devil goes after everybody in different ways, but for those of us who are traditional, one thing we have to be careful is that mentality of kind of like, I've arrived, right? Okay, now I found this birthright, as Peter Hinoski calls it, but I found it, I got it, I'm good now, right? And I always say to people, remember all of those progressive fathers who took over the council and destroyed the Roman rite, and all the members of the concilium who wrote the new mass, that morning before they did their work, they said a traditional mass. It isn't like once you have this, that it's a protection against, okay, now nothing can ever go wrong. And so we can never lose, I think, that attitude you said of continually being vigilant, thinking, reading, edifying ourselves, because you never arrive. You never sort of, okay, I'm done, I'm here. So that's a great, I think, a really important lesson from you. So thank you again for sharing your time with us. We will certainly let our viewers and readers know when your manuscript, because that sounds fascinating to read, Your Life with St. Alphonsus, when that becomes available, we'll certainly make that known. We look forward to your further contributions, both at LifeSite News and certainly to Catholic Family News. We're always welcome to contribute. And we certainly owe you a great debt of gratitude, because as I mentioned in the beginning, your article with questions for Vigano not only brought about that response of his, but really, I think, brought Catholic Family News to the attention of Archbishop Vigano. And since that time, we've had a wonderful relationship with the Archbishop, the great shepherd of our time, where he publishes things with us and sends us a lot of his things. And I attribute that to your to your making us, putting us on his radar screen, or bringing us to his attention. So we're very grateful to you for that. Thank you again, and hopefully we can get back again another time for you to share with our viewers on another topic. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Brian. Again, keep up the great work you guys are doing. Immense service to the church. So thank you.
Thank you, and please share this video and audio podcast if you enjoyed it, and I will see you at our next broadcast. Thank you.